This was wild. He had a chance to do a job, or at least did a job for a prawn manufacturing plant, and it was going to be a $500,000 project. The results were just phenomenal. It took everything to the next level and sped up, our research.
Hi, I'm Kyle Roof, SEO and international man of leisure. Welcome to POP Insights from the Inside, where I decode the success stories of POP users to find out how they combine POP with their own SEO workflows to grow traffic. Today I have Blake from Webology. We're going to dive into one of his client projects. Let's get started. Hey Blake, thanks for joining us.
Hey Kyle, great to be here.
Very nice to see you. Nice to meet you. Blake, I know that your digital marketing agency is based out of Birmingham. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. And on the way in today, I was thinking about how we are a remote first agency, and the traffic coming into Birmingham sometimes is just horrible. And today was one of those days, unfortunately, but glad to be here. And so that's kind of how we're structured. Most of our people are here in town, but we do have team members, really at this point all over the world, UK, Philippines, places like that. And so we are very much a strategy first agency. And what I mean by that is we typically like to work with clients that have budgets to allow us to spend really the first 2 to 4 weeks just kind of, putting together a comprehensive digital strategy and figuring out like what components work best for their brand and their target audience.
With that type of mindset or kind of framework that you put in place, what type of clients do you typically work with?
So it's really all across the board. I say, a lot of times I'll say we're specialized in SEO and programmatic ads and a few other things. But at the end of the day, we work with everybody that, typically would need help. We do have a big focus on local SEO. I like to say that kind of helped us, through the pandemic, because when a lot of the big corporate budgets were being cut, our local clients weren't really affected so much. So we do like to focus on that.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a funny thing when you get into certain niches and then nobody anticipates a pandemic, but but some niches benefited more than others for sure.
Yeah.
Now, you guys also use POP. How long have you been a POP user?
Oh gosh, I think we had to have been like, if not the first 100 users, maybe in the first 1,000.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
I remember
awesome.
like years and years ago getting a tool, and we bought a 1-year subscription, and we just haven't looked back since then because the results were just phenomenal. It took everything to the next level and sped up, our research.
Oh, that's makes me happy to hear, especially since we're doing this on our channel. It would be bad luck if it wasn't working for you.
Yeah, it's been great.
So
We love it.
you guys have put together a really cool case study. This client in particular, they're a landscaping company in the local area in Birmingham. And as I understand it, this is a friend of yours from high school. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
Do you
right.
know
So
the
we
company?
worked together, middle school, high school. We kind of, so I was in the military for a few years. We didn't keep in touch during that time, but then came back, started the agency. And I think it all started out because, I needed a website kind of as a portfolio example for, one of our projects. I built him one and just kind of let it sit out there for years and years. And so we didn't really do any SEO for, I would say, the first 5 years or so his site was live.
Now, the important question is when you think about budget, did you give them like the friend price, or was this the I remember what you did in high school price and you're paying double?
Well, we actually got along really good in high school. So we gave him a good price. It was less than $1,000 a month. It was one of those things to where like he wasn't comfortable with a big budget. And so we had to kind of start small and, manage his expectations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And something that I recall reading about this is that, as you mentioned, you built the site, but he really wasn't getting any leads really from online. All of his lead gen was from a more traditional offline source. I would imagine referrals from previous clients would be a guess. But there really wasn't a lot going on with the website. Is that right?
That's right. And it seems to be common in his industry. A lot of it is word of mouth, and a lot of it's literally just if a truck rolls up the street, the neighbor sees it, and maybe their grass is a little too high, maybe they need some mulching. And so he had never done anything online up to that point. It was all word of mouth, and that's how his business had been maintained for years.
Very cool. That's kind of fun because that gives you a canvas to play with, right?
Yeah.
Essentially,
Oh, yeah.
this is we have to do it all. You also though have to get into education. If he hasn't been doing any of that work, he really probably doesn't have even some of the basics, even some of the terminology perhaps that's going on. So was that part of this for you as well? Kind of like in a way, we're going to be doing these things, but I also have to explain to you kind of why behind it or the what is it.
Yeah, to some degree, like some of the things I asked him for early on, I know it's a pain. Can you drive to the office and can we get your Google profile built and set up and verified?
Yeah.
And, stuff like that. Stuff like, why is it important to have your face on the website? Well, people are trusting you to come to their home and do work. And so that builds trust if they see that face and put a name to it online. And so those things were kind of educational early on. But after that, it was just like, let's, let it rip and build content and, do our thing. And he's out doing his thing all summer.
Now, were there any, obviously, leads are the goal here, we're trying to increase leads, but were there any kind of other specific goals that were put in place, maybe about traffic gains or impression gains or anything else, or was it really just, we're going to do this and then we're going to see if we can just generate leads?
It was literally all about leads. And so it was, getting past that disbelief with him. I think we got to day 90 and some business partners I had at the time were like, okay, this guy hasn't paid a single invoice. What's going on? We need to cut him loose. And then lo and behold, a few weeks later, he gets that first lead, sends me a text all excited, and then immediately pays the invoices. And here we are over a year later, still working together. So it all worked out.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. So let's get into the strategy here, what you did. Kind of walk me through. You kind of mentioned maybe not there weren't any leads in like that first 60 to 90 days. Then the leads are, but in that first 30 days, what's the first thing you do when you're kind of starting this type of project? Where do you begin?
I think the first thing to do is just look over the website and see what we've got. You mentioned the canvas earlier on in the call. It was basically a blank canvas for us. It had poor design, hadn't been touched in years. And so we immediately said, okay, what do we need here? We need service pages, and then we need location pages. And that was sort of how his strategy played out, being budget conscious. We can't really start with links and citations early on. But it worked out because some of the strategy was, he's got all these suburbs around his market, which is really a suburb of Birmingham, if you will. And in some cases, populations of less than 10,000. And so early on, it was like, let's build 12 location pages, target these suburbs. All we need is 1 or 2 leads per season per page. And then, the client's happy. And so that was what we started with.
That's a fantastic way to think about it. How many leads does each page need to generate? Essentially, if you have enough pages and we could just get 1 lead or 2 leads a page for the season, that's it. And so it's not a bad way to work backwards from there than to think about how many pages you need to build, and how big does the site actually need to be, or how big can we get it to? With the budget in mind, were you able to do all the service pages and all the location pages at once, or were you breaking those up kind of within those first 3 months?
So if I remember correct, we did like maybe 3 or 4 per month, and we kind of did it in a way that, started with a good baseline and allowed us to kind of automate, copy and paste a lot of things. So
Sure.
we use Divi, the page builder, a lot on WordPress. And what I did was I just went out and grabbed a really good looking landscaping theme, put some content on it. I think we used Jasper at the time to do that initially. And then we ran it through PageOptimizer Pro.
Okay.
And then at that point, we knew, okay, what do we need to add to this page? Do we need to add some images, FAQ sections, things like that? And so we literally copied that page over, 12 times essentially. And then we made the content unique where it needed to be. Obviously we can do things like add the same testimonials and that sort of thing, but it was really just about light customization, based off that template. And then we reran POP, and I told the team, just spend time, maybe an hour or 2 on these pages, get it more in line with the signals that POP tells us we need, and then let's publish them, see if they index. And then we go back, maybe a month or 2 later, and if any didn't index at that point, our on-page specialist goes through it with like a fine-tooth comb and says like, okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Like, can we make these small changes, like add a bold tag here or there, and that sort of thing to try to get it to index.
Sure. Once you got those pages up, did you find by going after the neighborhoods that, or the suburbs, as you're saying, that you're able to kind of rank quickly for those areas, or did you find like maybe some of the other terms that you weren't expecting hit? Like, how did things start to go after you got that content up?
It was interesting because it was almost like you could look at the bigger population density areas and say like, this page is not doing so well versus the ones that were like really both smaller markets and also closer to his actual business address. And so those sort of, got on page 1 fairly quick. And then a lot of them really, over the course of months and years, started to jump up a little bit. But like there's one suburb, it's practically a city unto itself. And it's, we're still struggling with it because it's just so competitive and so dense.
But then, you think about when you're covering everything else, you're kind of going where the competitors are not, perhaps,
Yeah.
getting your wins there.
Yeah.
It's often people want to fight the hard fight, when it's like, why not try to just make it easy on yourself and go get your wins in
Yeah.
other places?
And in this case, make it easy on the client too, because we were also
Mm.
conscious of drive time and like, how profitable he can be if he has to go, 1 mile versus 10 to get to a job site. So
No,
that came into
for
play.
sure,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. Um, in addition to doing pop on those service and location pages, did you do anything else within pop, say with like eat or page structure or anything like that?
So just to keep it simple for him, like we did the basics we knew we needed, like an about terms of service page. But then within POP, specifically what we did after those location pages went live was we, built out custom schema markup and basically did that at the
Mm.
page level based on, what we saw competitors doing. And we use rank math for our SEO plugin. So that makes it really easy to just go in and copy that from POP into the schema editor there and just save it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Uh, After that, I assume you'd mentioned you're doing some other things for local. That's kind of pretty standard, like running through citations, maybe getting local links if that was in the budget. What else did you do that was external?
External, I would say the biggest thing early on, especially, was his Google Business Profile. We wanted to make sure that it was, optimized, had the right categories, and then we did some linking to his business profile. We also did, some map embeds. I think we might
Mm.
have had budget to do like a, SEO press release early on, but those were the main things I think is the citations. Once we got to the point where we could actually build citations, it really took off, and that's when he
Mm.
started seeing, leads going into the slow months. Like for us, that would be December, January, and February to some degree. He was able to kind of keep things going and stay busy on landscaping.
I have to ask because people will want to ask when you say map embeds, what do you mean by that?
Oh yeah, good question. So basically taking his Google My Business profile, the map of it, if you go to Google, you can share a map, and basically that's an iframe in HTML. So what it does is it just takes that map and puts it on the page for us. And so that's also really good for local, to kind of have that somewhere on most of your pages. A lot of times we'll put it down in the footer section next to like social icons and things like that. So
Very, very cool. So you mentioned when you think of challenges with this client, challenge one was getting paid at the beginning. Challenge two, which I think is really super smart, which I would not something that would come to my mind first actually, would be drive time. When you're focusing on which pages to do first or how to focus, we really want to be conscious of, is this even a good, even if we get a lead here, is this even good for the client? Which is really kind of going the extra mile, I think, in terms of taking care of your clients. Did you have any other challenges in particular with this client?
um, yeah, I would say one of the challenges that we ran into early on was just with his website being so out of date from a tech standpoint. The tech stack was old, so I think we had to move it into the Divi theme, and then we had to do just a plugin cleanup. A lot of times, what I see personally is a lot of people will, clutter their sites up with a lot of plugins that they don't really need. Sometimes they do duplicate functions, and so we had to consolidate things. And
Hmm.
I don't think speed's a big factor for local SEO, but if you get to a certain threshold, it becomes a problem, and I think that's one thing we had to deal with early on.
All right, Blake, that's awesome. Now to the fun stuff, the the thing that everybody tunes in for, the results. What did we get for this client?
Yeah, so the results were phenomenal. I mentioned his goal of getting 100 customers. He hit that, in the first year before we went into the slow season. His crew actually stayed on board too. So, I mentioned earlier they were able to, stay in through January and February because of landscaping
Oh wow.
projects. That's stuff that they can do, when the grass isn't growing. And he also got a lot of commercial attention too, because he was really the only game in town. Like when somebody in his big market would Google him, he would be in maps, he would be number one. And so they just felt like he was a larger company. And eventually that just kept building momentum on itself. And a couple of good leads he got recently. So one, this was wild. He had a chance to do a job, or at least bid a job for a car manufacturing plant, and it was going to be a $500,000 project. And
Huh.
then another one he got that was great on the residential side. So he got a job with somebody that's literally on the ninth hole at like the big golf course in the area, and it was landscaping and everything. So it was a $500 a month contract, that came in through his Google business profile. And those sort of things, help us build relationships with partners that are local that, really can stand the test of time and last the lifetime of their business, because, you don't turn something like that off if it's working typically.
No, and that's well, to go from no online leads
Oh,
to like business changing online leads. That's pretty decent results. I'd be pretty happy with that.
yeah, we made a believer out of Dave, believe it or not, and so we're still buddies to this day.
Yeah, yeah, that's the other risk on this whole thing was losing a friend, so kind of
Yeah,
came through on both. Good stuff.
exactly.
Well, Blake, that's awesome. If Blake, people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
So you can visit our website, webology.io. You can also reach out to me, Blake at webology.io directly if you want to get in touch.
Awesome. Thanks so much, and thanks everybody for listening. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, Blake.
Thanks, Kyle.